So let's talk about the prairie dogs first. And I know that all parts of the West don't have them, but certainly here in Montana, we get concerned about them. Look at all the different things to control them, and obviously habitat, cultural are some things that we can't do much about. When we actually start trying to reduce their populations, we look at shooting, trapping, fumigants, and toxicants. Shooting, a lot like when we talked about ground squirrels, shooting can be a lot of fun. You can actually make money off of it. There's people that'll pay to come and shoot prairie dogs. Doing it yourself, if you don't include your time, it's probably pretty cheap and free if it's just fun. But if you really look at the time it takes and the results you get, it can be pretty expensive. When will it work? Not very often. I have seen a couple situations where a prairie dog town was controlled, and there ended up a couple prairie dogs showed up along a ditch bank, and they shot those, and it seemed to be the last of the ones that they had. Obviously, you can't do it around livestock, and as the same situation exists with prairie dogs that we have with ground squirrels, that when you create all these vacancies, the juvenile prairie dog will be able to use them after mama kicks them out. So if you don't totally eliminate a prairie dog population, then you will be having increased juvenile survival just because of the holes that you maintain or that you have remaining, which again comes back to making sure you try to revegetate the property. Trapping, conibears will work. Again, we're not talking about the 200-acre prairie dog towns. We're talking about a rather small area, and just putting the trap over the hole works real good. Some places that use toxicants to control the prairie dogs, they come back, they close up all the holes after the treatment, and then later on in the summer they come back, and any of the holes that have been open, they put a trap over, and that works pretty good because it's a lot less traps that you have to use. Fumigants. Zinc phosphide is used quite often, and it is very effective in prairie dog holes. The gas cartridges also work. Both of those things are very time consuming. You have to remember again that the phostoxin tablets are a restricted use fumigant because they can be very dangerous. If you use those, the time that is taken up is because you have to plug up the hole to keep the gas inside. It's very important when you're using, especially phostoxin, that you get the tablets way down deep in the hole, and using a piece of pipe that you stick down in the hole, drop the tablets into it, that will get it way down in there so that you don't cover it up with dirt when you're plugging up, sealing off that hole. Sometimes we put clumps of newspaper down in the hole and then cover that with the dirt. We have also done that with the gas cartridges. Put the gas cartridge in the hole after it's lit, put the wadded newspaper on it, plug up the hole. It does a very good job of plugging the hole, and a couple times the newspaper started on fire. So you need to be aware that that can happen with the gas cartridges because you do light them. But the phostoxin can work real good. You need to be real careful when using that during the summer. If you leave it set on the hood or on the dash of a pickup truck and you open it up, it will put out vapor of phosphine, or of the phostoxin, which as soon as you breathe it in becomes phosphine gas. I don't know of any fatalities, but I definitely know some people that got very sick from inhaling that when they opened the top of it and then it squirted out. So be real careful with that phostoxin because it looks like a very safe product, this little tablet, but it can be very dangerous. I think all that I covered. That's what the phostoxin tablets look like. Okay, toxicants. Again, when you're looking at a large-scale prairie dog control situation, the toxicants are usually the most economical. Zinc phosphide's restricted use. It's a single lethal dose. They only have to get a few grains of that in their mouth, and when it mixes with their saliva, it turns into phosphine gas, and it kills them rather quickly. And the zinc phosphide works real good. However, it doesn't taste good. It's bitter, and rodents pick up that taste quite quickly. You want to use it only during dry periods because you don't want it to get damp. If it gets rained on or misted on, that phosphine gas will be released and then the stuff is no good anymore. It's important that you pre-bait with clean oats so that you know that the animals are going to accept it and that they start getting used to it. We want to use 1 teaspoon near each burrow. You don't dump that on as a pile. You want it to scatter a little bit. And you definitely don't want it down in the hole because all they do is trample it. They go over it and back and forth. What we have, though, I mentioned how important it is to trap or to use phostoxin early in the year, but the label says that in Kansas, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, we can only use it from July till February. Well, lo and behold, that leaves out the months of March and April when we're going to have the greatest chance of success. Luckily, we have a 24C in Montana, and in spite of the fact that it says it can only be used July 1, the 1 year to February, we have an exception is what I should call it. And so we can control prairie dogs in the early spring using zinc phosphide. So if you look at the stickers on the label, that'll say that, but sometimes it just has the original sticker that says you can. Okay. There's another product that is just coming out, and my first inclination is not to even tell people about it because of all the restrictions that are on it. But Rosol prairie dog bait. We have used Rosol for many years for ground squirrel control, and it is very effective because they like it. It tastes good. As opposed to the zinc phosphide, Rosol tastes good. I was working on some ground squirrel projects where we were back rebaiting, putting bait in our buckets, and there's the ground squirrel comes out and starts eating the bait at a hole we treated right next to the pickup. That's how much they liked it. And so I have hopes that because it is so palatable, that it will work good for the prairie dogs as well. There are severe label restrictions. It's an anticoagulant bait, so it's in a lot of ways you could say that it's less of a hazard to non-targets. And now here are some of the problems with it. It has to be used at least 6 inches down into the burrow. Remember what I said before? Don't put things in the burrow, the zinc phosphide in the burrow, because they'll just trample it. Well, this has to be used at least 6 inches into the burrow, and the idea is there that it's going to taste so good that they're going to stop and eat it. Another label restriction is that you need to do surveys after you have done the treatment. And these are set out in very formal guides. In other words, how far apart you are when you're doing the survey, when you do it, how long you have to do it, different things like that. So there's a lot of restrictions on using Rosol, but I think once we kind of show that it can be used and it can be used safely, that then maybe some of these restrictions will be relaxed a little bit and it'll be a more practical thing to use. The way the wording is on there is that it has to be at least 6 inches into the burrow and it may only be used in underground applications. So for prairie dog, that seems like a difficulty, but some of the tests that were done in Colorado, they had pretty good success with it. So I think that at some point in the future, we'll have people using it more and we'll get more reports on it in other parts of the country.